Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees and here are today's top stories. UK regulators are investigating Apple and its App Store. A landmark study shows that academic freedom in universities is in a real crisis. And GCHQ releases new documents to mark a secret pact formed 75 years ago which led to the Five Eyes Alliance. Regulators have launched an investigation into Apple's App Store. They're concerned that its dominating position stifles competition and hurts consumers. NTD's Patrick Hayden takes a look.
Regulators are looking into suspected breaches of competition law by Apple and its App Store. The investigation follows a complaint from app developers who say they are being forced into using the store. They're also complaining about Apple's up to 30% commission that is taken from App Store payments. Apple says the App Store is a safe and trusted place for customers and it's a great business opportunity for developers. The chief executive of Competition and Markets Authority, Andrea Corselli, says complaints that Apple is using its market position to restrict competition and choice warrant careful scrutiny. The Watchdog will investigate if Apple imposes unfair and anti-competitive terms on developers. Big players like Epic Games, Spotify and Tinder have accused Apple of iron-fisted tactics to force them into compliance. In Europe, Spotify further claims that it's restricted in the App Store to give an advantage to Apple's music streaming service. Apple says it's looking forward to explaining its App Store guidelines to the UK Watchdog and says its store protects customers from malware and prevents any rampant data collection without consent. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
Cyprus is opening its borders to vaccinated British tourists from the beginning of May. British citizens can travel to the Mediterranean island without restrictions from the 1st of May as long as they've had both doses of a COVID-19 vaccine. But there's one sticking point. Under the UK's lockdown rules, Brits won't be allowed to travel abroad until the 17th of May at the earliest. A landmark study finds that academic freedom in the UK is in real crisis. NTD's John Conway tells us more.
A report says that authoritarianism, political discrimination and self-censorship are rife in UK universities. The research comes from the Centre for the Study of Partisanship and Ideology, or CSPI. It looks at professors and lecturers as well as PhD and master's students. It says that conservative academics are experiencing formal complaints and even disciplinary action, which often leads to self-censorship.
What that does is it shuts down views that challenge orthodoxy, whether that's research, whether that's in the classroom, and that simply makes the university not function as effectively.
The author of the report, Eric Kaufman, tells us 1 in 3 conservative academics and PhD students are victims of cancellation culture. Then what is cancellation?
It covers both hard financial penalties such as loss of livelihood, but also social penalties, including ostracism and perhaps not being able to get a job or perhaps access certain services, perhaps a web hosting or Twitter or social media.
The report also covers the United States and Canada. It finds that academics on the left of the political spectrum discriminate against those on the right, and that also those on the right discriminate against those on the left at roughly the same rate. But in UK universities, the ratio between right and left is 1:9, meaning a much higher rate of discrimination against right-leaning academics.
We've got a very large scale of political discrimination operating.
Last month, the UK announced proposals to strengthen free speech and academic freedom in higher education. Kaufman welcomed the move.
Essentially, the law protects academic freedom and it doesn't protect emotional safety. Universities have been essentially bending the law.
The study brings together 8 surveys and looks at views on Brexit supporters as an indicator of political discrimination. It turns out that 1 in 3 UK academics wouldn't hire a Brexiteer. Joanna Conway, NTD News.
Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab says the threat from Islamic extremism remains all too clear.
Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said in a House of Commons speech on Thursday that children are being radicalised online. He said it's through access to terrorist propaganda by jihadist group Daesh, also known as ISIS.
In December 2020, the UK Counter-Terrorism Internet Referral Unit saw a 7% rise in the volume of terrorist content online. And we can see a worrying rise in the proportion of children and teenagers that are now being arrested for terrorism offences.
He cited the Assistant Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, who describes lockdown and the accessibility of terrorist content online as a perfect storm.
Foreign Secretary Lisa Nandy.
MP Lisa Nandy questioning Raab on what's being done.
Mr Speaker, I was deeply troubled to hear the Foreign Secretary outline the way that children are being targeted by Daesh propaganda. Does the Foreign Secretary agree that it is appalling that British children in the UK are being groomed to join Daesh? And can he therefore tell me what steps the government is taking to protect children from this threat?
Raab referred to the announcement in November of the National Cyber Force joining forces with other defence agencies.
We're degrading their network, we're dismantling their lies, but also, and importantly, we're building resilience on the ground to their violent extremist narrative. And that particular, and I would describe it as an attritional battle, is often invisible to the public and the media.
He says the UK will continue to play a full role in combating Daesh.
Now this is the moment when fugitive convict Clint Butler tried to evade recapture. After being asked why he was in town during lockdown and who he was, he gave an excuse and tried to run off by kicking an officer in the groin. He had been serving a 17-year sentence for robbery and firearms offences. The police quickly wrestled him to the ground and arrested him. He got 19 months for absconding from the open prison and attacking the officers. Australia is asking the EU to review Italy's move to prevent a vaccine shipment. But Italy says the blockade won't affect its vaccination plan.
Italy this week blocked a planned export of around 250,000 doses of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. Australia on Friday asked the European Commission to review this decision. The block came after the drug manufacturer failed to meet its EU contract commitments. Australia said the missing doses won't affect its own vaccine rollout, and the Prime Minister showed understanding for Italy.
I can certainly understand the high level of anxiety that would exist in Italy and in many countries across Europe, as is regularly conveyed to me. And so they have some real difficulties there. They are in an unbridled crisis situation. That is not the situation in Australia.
The Italian Prime Minister told fellow EU leaders they must take a tougher approach to drug companies. The French Health Minister said on Friday that France could follow Italy's move. Fearing shortages, in January the EU introduced an export control mechanism for vaccines. Italy was the first country to use it.
The UK's intelligence agency GCHQ releases documents showing how a secret pact between the UK and the US was formed 75 years ago. The pact later developed into an intelligence sharing alliance known as the Five Eyes.
Documents released by GCHQ include the private diary of Commander Alistair Dennison, the head of the Government Code and Cipher School. His diary mentions the arrival of 4 American cryptologists to Bletchley Park in February 1941. That's before the US officially entered World War II. The meeting was held at Bletchley Park. Dennison told his assistant to prepare some sherry and not to reveal the visitors' identities to anyone. It was over a midnight glass of sherry that the UK and the US shared intelligence, including the UK's greatest secret, the bomb machine. Designed by Alan Turing and Gordon Welshman, it broke the German Enigma code. The visit paved the way for the UK-USA agreement, signed in March 1946. 3 years later, Canada joined. Australia and New Zealand followed in 1956, and the modern-day Five Eyes alliance was formed. GCHQ Director Jeremy Fleming and the head of US National Security Agency General Paul Nakasone say, "For 75 years, this extraordinary partnership has enabled us to evolve and learn from each other. It helps us equip our leaders with the information they need and it ultimately makes the UK and US safer.
A new law in Spain, if passed, would shake up how food delivery riders for companies like Deliveroo, Uber Eats and Glovo would operate. The law will see riders classified as employees and not as contractors. NTD's Patrick Hayden has the details.
Gig workers doing food delivery in Spain are expected to be classified as employees rather than contractors. Currently, these workers do not receive full employment benefits such as wage protection, social security or insurance in Spain, but that's set to change. Some riders are hoping for the change, but others don't want it.
What we love about this job is freedom. Being able to work when we want, being able to go out to work when we need it. If we need more work or our rental expenses grow, we work twice as much. No one is going to tell us that we can't work.
Azad believes the new law will help take pressure off.
Man, I'm in a bad situation. Yes, because I've spent a couple of weeks in which I've been working 8, 9, 10 hours a day, but I earn 10 or 15 euros. This doesn't help me make a living, to eat, to support my family. It would be nice for me to have a contract and a fixed salary.
A death of a Deliveroo rider on the streets of Madrid last month while working has brought spotlight on how these workers are treated. The new law would give riders and their families more protection in the case of a fatal accident. A Supreme Court ruled in September that workers of the Barcelona-based food delivery app Glovo were employees, not freelancers. Labour unions denounced that some delivery companies are looking to hire riders through intermediary companies to get around the expected change. A union representative says it's clear who the boss is.
Sí, la plataforma. If the platform by using an app tells you where to work, how many orders you have to take, your salary and where you have to be and at what time, you are an employed worker. The company is the boss.
Hiring riders will mean that the employer will have to pay social security costs, which amount to about a third of a salary. It would also mean that the company would have to provide riders with their means to carry out their work. That would include providing a bicycle or a motorbike. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
The rule of law is crumbling in Hong Kong. This is forcing many Hong Kongers to leave the region. They say they welcome the UK's offer to BNO passport holders. NTD's Neil Woodrow reports.
Andrew is one who wanted to flee Hong Kong. He's a BNO passport holder. He wears a mask to protect his identity. He felt the national security law imposed on Hong Kong last year was not good for pro-democracy people such as himself. Then in August, when the police raided the offices of the long-established newspaper founded by pro-democracy activist Jimmy Lai, he felt Hong Kong was no longer different from mainland China.
At that time of thinking that Hong Kong was turning to the dictatorship. So I left Hong Kong last year's August.
Another is Aragon. He says since June 2019, the situation in Hong Kong had escalated quite quickly, with police violence increasing, many hundreds of corpses found with hands bound behind their backs and some with bullets in them. He felt he had no choice but to leave. But by doing so, he feels there's no chance to go back home.
Even non-activists and not political figure, anyone that have left Hong Kong, if they try to get back to Hong Kong for any purpose, there is a chance that they would be monitored or even followed by the police or the national security agents. That's my understanding, basically. So that is the most difficult part.
Aragon is trying to encourage someone close to him to leave. He fears for those who remain in Hong Kong.
I hope that millions of people will be fleeing Hong Kong for freedom, for their own life. But I believe that in the foreseeable future, or even in this year, there may be only just 100,000 or 200,000 leaving Hong Kong. And then the remaining 6 or 7 million would end up Uyghurs in Xinjiang.
The CCP's iron grip on Hong Kong is getting ever tighter. Senior Chinese Politburo member Wang Yang on Thursday said that Beijing will resolutely support the principle that Hong Kong should be governed by communist patriots. On Friday, China Premier Li Keqiang said they will resolutely guard against anti-terror interference by external forces in Hong Kong's affairs. Back in the UK, MP Andrew Rosendale referenced a report on Hong Kong that found hard evidence of widespread harassment at best and torture at worst. Rosendale urges Dominic Raab to impose Magnitsky-style sanctions on senior officials in Hong Kong responsible for the continued perpetration of human rights abuses against Uyghurs and Hong Kongers. This includes major political figures such as Carrie Lam. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
Up next, former Tory leader Sir Ian Duncan Smith criticises the government for blocking the genocide amendment to the trade bill. Find out more when we return. A former Tory leader says the government is making a mistake by blocking a genocide amendment to the trade bill. We spoke to Sir Ian Duncan Smith about why it's important. NTD's Trevor Piper tells us more.
Sir Ian Duncan Smith is one of the main proponents in the Commons for an amendment to the UK's post-Brexit trade bill. If passed, it could stop bilateral trade with genocidal countries. The government is trying to prevent the amendment from passing in the Commons. Duncan Smith says Downing Street has no chance but to bring it up for a vote.
If they don't bring it back, they don't get their trade bill, doesn't become law, makes it more difficult for them to do trade deals and trade arrangements. So they have to deal with this amendment one way or the other.
The amendment in its third iteration was passed by the Lords. Duncan Smith says he knows the reason why the government is opposed.
I think the truth of the reason why the government has resisted this endlessly, it's almost illogical the way that they've constantly resisted this. It's because they genuinely, behind the scenes, do want to strike some kind of trade arrangement with the present Chinese government.
He says the UK government felt pressure after the European Union signed what he calls a terrible trade deal with China. Duncan Smith says it would be a mistake for the UK to follow suit. In December of last year, the EU agreed on an investment deal with China. It still needs to be ratified.
And so I think the UK feels under pressure because of having left the European Union. We don't want them to have advantage. That's the thinking of the government, but it's the wrong thinking.
The Chinese regime is accused of committing genocide in Xinjiang. He said pursuing the allegations via an international route is blocked because of China's veto power in the UN. Some argue that the UK acting unilaterally would hardly achieve anything. Duncan Smith disagrees.
What's the alternative, which is do nothing? Do nothing because you have a very low regard for your own ability and capability. I think the truth is the UK needs to lead. The UK does have significant influence, no matter what they think.
The date for the vote on the amendment in the Commons is yet to be announced. Trevor Piper, NTD News.
Officials in Germany say they are sending a warship to cross the South China Sea this August, but that they don't intend to go through areas claimed by Beijing. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more.
Amid the CCP's increasing aggression in the South China Sea, Germany will send a warship through the waters there. This will be the first German warship to cross the South China Sea since nearly 2 decades. The U.S. hailed the move, saying that it, quote, welcomes Germany's support for a rules-based international order in the Indo-Pacific. The Chinese regime's foreign ministry says that countries are free to sail through the waterway under international law, but they cannot use it to undermine China's sovereignty. The regime's extensive territorial claims in the South China Sea have been condemned internationally. In 2016, an international tribunal has ruled Beijing's claims unlawful. The U.S. has also rejected the claims. It says Beijing's claims to offshore resources across most of the South China Sea are completely unlawful. German officials said on Tuesday that the warship will set sail in August. On its return journey, it will cross the South China Sea. But they also said the frigate will not intrude on Beijing's territorial claims.
China has responded to a third case of swine flu this year, but indications in the U.S. suggest the situation could be more serious. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more on China.
Pig stock prices in the U.S. have risen by over 25% this year. That's after the African swine fever is apparently making a comeback in China, which fueled meat supply concerns. African swine fever is a viral disease harmless to humans but highly contagious among pigs. According to an official statement from the Chinese regime, in South China's Yunnan province, 36 pigs were slaughtered due to the disease. The statement says it was only the third case this year in China. But independent meat analyst Simon Quilty is casting doubt over Beijing's claims. By his numbers, up to millions of Chinese pigs may have already died from the disease or been slaughtered this year. He says that's because there's a new strain of the disease that reportedly emerged in China. Malaysia, South Africa, and Germany also detected the African swine fever recently. It hasn't been found in the U.S. China's pig herd is the biggest in the world, but it was struck with a swine fever outbreak back in 2018. The outbreak left hundreds of millions of pigs dead. A Reuters examination finds that the disease spread swiftly because the Chinese regime systematically underreports outbreaks.
New York is experimenting with a vaccine passport app. It's meant to make reopening venues and businesses a little easier. Some New Yorkers are keen on the idea, but some say it's about choice. NTD's Phil Zhou has the details.
New York is testing out a CCP virus passport. You can download it on your smartphone, and just by scanning a QR code, you can show your COVID test results and if you've been vaccinated or not. So far, it's been used at a New York Rangers and Brooklyn Nets game.
It's called the Excelsior Pass, launched by New York's governor. The new technology is meant to fast-track reopenings for large venues like stadiums and theaters. But it could also be used for smaller businesses.
A bit intrusive, but I think you get over that and accept the fact that that's for a good cause.
Anything that's going to get this thing over with, finished, so that we can open up the economy, get everything stabilized.
One business remains neutral.
I respect everybody, you know. If you want to use it or not use it, for me it doesn't matter, you know.
Another said it's a good idea, but has concerns.
Especially because the vaccine isn't available to everyone at this point right now. I don't want it to become, only people who are lucky and privileged to get the vaccine can go into my establishment. I think that's discriminatory. I don't think that's okay.
The program is done in partnership with IBM.
The app is still being tested right now, but the governor says after getting proper approvals, the public will be able to download it on your Google and Apple phones. Phil Zhou, NTD News, New York.
Honda is selling a limited edition of its flagship Legend Saloon. It's equipped with Level 3 autonomous driving technology. That means letting the car take charge of controls. It's on sale now in Japan for around £73,000.
Self-driving cars equipped to navigate congested highways. Honda says it will sell a limited batch of its flagship Legend sedan equipped with the cutting-edge autonomous technology. That makes it the world's first automaker to sell vehicles equipped with the certified Level 3 autonomy. Once activated, that allows drivers to watch movies or use screens while their car takes charge. And the plan to sell 100 of the vehicles is a significant step towards a bigger goal. Honda wants to be the first company to mass-produce a car with Level 3 ability. Honda said the Legend's traffic jam pilot system can control acceleration, braking and steering under certain conditions, adding that it can also alert the driver to respond when handing over the control, such as by vibrating the driver's seatbelt. If the driver continues to be unresponsive, the system will assist with an emergency stop by decelerating and stopping the vehicle, while alerting surrounding cars with hazard lights and the horn. The autonomous race is on among global automakers and tech companies. Both Alphabet's Waymo and Tesla have been investing heavily in self-driving tech. Audi unveiled a Level 3 car of its own in 2017, but regulatory hurdles prevented it being widely adopted.
A Japanese billionaire is recruiting a crew for a mission to the moon in 2023. They'll be flying on one of Elon Musk's rockets, and anyone can apply. That's of course if you weren't put off by Wednesday's test flight explosion.
It will be the first private mission to go beyond Earth orbit and out to the moon. And you can go, maybe. Japanese billionaire Yusaku Maezawa is recruiting for an 8-person crew. The fashion entrepreneur has paid for the trip on a rocket being developed by Elon Musk's SpaceX. Maezawa originally said the crew would be composed of artists. Now he's opened it up to all.
I began to think that maybe every single person who is doing something creative could be called an artist. That was the conclusion that I came to, and that's why I wanted to reach out to a wider, more diverse audience, to give more people across the world the opportunity to join this journey. If you see yourself as an artist, then you're an artist.
The week-long mission is set for 2023, and Maezawa says it's on schedule. It will take the amateur astronauts on a trip around the moon. Elon Musk says that will put the voyagers into the history books.
This mission, we expect people will go further than any human has ever gone from planet Earth.
Applicants will need to pass a medical and, eventually, an interview with Maezawa. The billionaire says he isn't doing any training yet, but is watching his alcohol intake and thinking deeply about the mission.
That's the news for today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stuart Leese.